On my daughter's birthday, I walked into her office carrying 6 roses and found her on her knees. I heard the shouting before I opened the door. "You broke our little rat! How dare you touch my stuff?" I stopped. My hand was still on the door. For a second, I thought I'd somehow walked into the wrong office. Then I heard my daughter's voice. "Martin, please, just let me explain." She was crying. I pushed the door open. She was beside her desk, one knee on the carpet, her face wet, trying to wipe her tears with the back of her hand. And standing over her was Martin Keller, her boss. I'd met Martin twice. The first time was at a company dinner. The second was at Christmas. Both times he'd shaken my hand and told me how much he respected my daughter. Now he was standing over her like she was something he'd caught stealing. He looked at me, then at the flowers. His whole expression changed. "Sir, this is a private company matter." I put the roses on my daughter's desk. "Get up, honey." She looked at me. "Dad, come on." She stood. Martin stepped forward. "Your daughter has been accessing confidential financial records." My daughter shook her head. "I was looking for my files." "You opened a locked cabinet because my employee number was attached to the documents inside." Martin gave a short laugh. "She doesn't understand what she's looking at." My daughter looked at him. "I understand enough." I looked between them. "What did you find?" She hesitated. Martin said, "You really don't need to involve yourself." I turned toward him. "I've already involved myself." My daughter opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. Martin moved toward her. "Give me that." She stepped back. "No." She handed it to me. I opened it. Invoices. Payment records. Bank information. Some payments were for several $1,000s. One was over $24,000. The names of the vendors looked ordinary. Office supplies. Maintenance. Consulting. But the account numbers didn't match. I looked at my daughter. "Did you approve these?" "No." Martin said. "Her credentials were used." She turned toward him. "By someone else." "You expect us to believe that?" "I changed my password 3 weeks ago." Martin went quiet. I looked at him. "If she stole money, call the police." He didn't answer. "Go ahead." Still nothing. That was the moment I knew something was wrong. I handed him the folder. "Keep it." Then I picked up the flowers. My daughter followed me out. We didn't speak until we reached the parking lot. She held the roses against her chest. "I ruined your birthday." "You didn't ruin anything. I should have told you." "Yes." She looked down. I was scared. "Of losing your job?" She shook her head. "Of what they'd do if I accused them." I waited. "Who is they?" She didn't answer. Her phone buzzed. She looked at it. A message from Martin. "You should have left it alone." I told her not to respond. Then another message appeared. "Unknown number." She handed me the phone. It said, "Ask your father about the building he sold." I stared at the screen. My daughter looked at me. "What building?" I didn't answer. 3 years earlier, I'd sold a small commercial property I'd owned for nearly 20 years. 4 offices downstairs, 2 apartments upstairs. It had helped pay for my daughter's college. I thought the property was long behind me. That night, I pulled the closing papers from my filing cabinet. The buyer was listed as Redwood Holdings. Then I saw the signature. Daniel Mercer, my daughter's co-worker. She looked over my shoulder. "Dad." "What?" "He asked me about that building once." I turned around. "When?" "About a year before you sold it." "What did he ask?" She thought for a moment. "He wanted to know if you were planning to sell." "Why?" "I don't know." Neither of us slept much that night. The next morning, I called my attorney. I brought him the closing documents, and my daughter brought everything she'd saved from work. He went through the property papers first. Then he checked Redwood Holdings. Daniel Mercer was listed as its manager. There was another name connected to the company. Eleanor Shaw, my daughter's president. I looked at my daughter. She whispered, "No." My attorney said, "You know her?" "She runs the company." He pulled up several financial records. Payments had moved from vendors connected to my daughter's employer into companies connected to Daniel. Then money had moved into Redwood Holdings. The same company that bought my building. My attorney didn't accuse anyone. He simply said, we need to follow the money. So we did. We didn't call Martin. We didn't call Eleanor. We didn't threaten Daniel. We collected everything. Emails, messages, login records, bank statements, old property documents. Then my daughter found an email from Martin. It was dated 6 weeks before her birthday. Change your password back. I need access tonight. She had replied. Why? His answer. Because I told you to. 2 days later, somebody accessed her account. The company computer logs showed the login came from Martin's office. That was useful. But my attorney kept saying the same thing. Don't prove that he could have done it. Prove that he did. Then my daughter was fired. The reason given was unauthorized access to confidential financial information. She read the letter at my kitchen table. They're making me look guilty. They're trying. What if everyone believes them? I looked at her. Then we'll give them the truth. A week later, a woman named Susan Bell contacted her. Susan had worked in the company's compliance department. She brought us internal audit reports. She'd been investigating suspicious payments for months. She'd warned Eleanor. Nothing happened. Then Susan showed us something that made my daughter cover her mouth. There were payments connected to Mercer Financial Services. And some of the money eventually went to Redwood Holdings. Susan said, I saw your father's property address in one of the files. I stared at her. What kind of file? A renovation invoice. She handed it to my attorney. The invoice claimed the renovation had cost $186,000. I knew that wasn't right. I'd paid for the work. It hadn't cost anywhere near that. Susan said the actual contractor had told her the work was less than half that amount. My attorney leaned back. The picture was finally starting to make sense. The property wasn't just an investment. It had been used as part of the money trail. Then Susan gave us a USB drive. There are emails on this. My attorney had them examined. 3 days later, he called me. There is an email from Martin. What does it say? It was sent the night before your daughter was fired. He paused. He was instructed to connect her credentials to the disputed payments before her access was removed. I felt my hands tighten. My daughter whispered, they planned it. My attorney nodded. But he wasn't finished. There are emails from Eleanor and Daniel too. Then he showed me something else. A bank account connected to the property transaction. My name was on it. I had never opened it. The signature looked like mine. But it wasn't. The account had been opened months before I even agreed to sell the building. My attorney checked my travel records. I had been out of state on the date the account was opened. Someone had used my identity. My daughter looked at me. Why would they need your name? I didn't know. Then the bank records answered that question. Money had moved through that account before going into Redwood Holdings. And one payment stood out. $140,000. The recipient's name was my younger brother. I stared at it. My brother had been dead for 11 years. My attorney checked the account. It wasn't my brother's. Someone had used his identity too. That was when I stopped thinking of this as a company scandal. They weren't just hiding money. They were building false trails. They had used my daughter's credentials. My identity, my dead brother's name, and my property. But we still needed the one thing that mattered. Proof strong enough that they couldn't explain it away. We got it through an old email. Susan had saved a message from Daniel. It discussed the property before I had even listed it. Daniel wrote, once the building closes, move the difference through Redwood. There was another message from Eleanor. And keep the employee exposure clean. My attorney read both messages twice. Then he looked at me. We have enough to go forward. The investigators were contacted. We gave them everything. They traced the money. The renovation invoice was inflated. The difference had been divided between connected companies. Some money went to Daniel. Some went to a company owned by Eleanor's husband. Some returned to the business through legitimate accounts. And some passed through the account created in my name. My daughter had been made the convenient person to blame. But now the trail ran in the opposite direction, straight toward the people who had built it. We waited. For almost 3 weeks, nothing happened. Then Martin called my daughter. She didn't know my attorney was listening. Martin said, I think we can fix this. She asked, Fix what? Your termination. Why? He hesitated. Then he said something that finished the job for us. We needed somebody whose name was already in the system. My daughter went silent. He continued. You weren't supposed to find anything. My attorney ended the call. The recording went to the investigators. After that, everything moved quickly. Martin was placed on leave. Daniel's accounts were frozen. Eleanor was removed from her position. The company withdrew my daughter's termination. They offered her the job back. She refused. She didn't want to return to a place where she'd spent months wondering who was watching her. Instead, she took another job, a better one. Months later, the investigation became a criminal case. Daniel admitted to fraud and identity misuse. Martin admitted he had used employee credentials under instructions from senior management. Eleanor denied everything until the emails were placed in front of her. After that, her lawyers stopped arguing that the emails didn't exist. They started arguing about responsibility. My property was eventually sold again. The fraudulent portion of the renovation money was recovered. Not every dollar, but enough. And my daughter received a formal letter clearing her name. She kept it. I did too. About a year after everything happened, we had dinner together. She brought flowers. 6 roses. She put them on the table and laughed. I hate 6 roses now. I laughed. Then she got quiet. You know what I remember most about that day? What? You walking through that door. I looked at her. She said, I thought nobody was going to believe me. I reached across the table and took her hand. I never told her how scared I had been. I never told her how many nights I had sat awake wondering whether I'd made things worse. She didn't need to know. The people who had tried to destroy her lost their jobs, their companies, and their reputations. But that wasn't my victory. My victory was much smaller. My daughter stopped apologizing for things she hadn't done. She stopped checking her phone with fear. And she stopped looking over her shoulder. I still have a picture of those 6 roses. They're sitting on her desk. Whenever I see it, I remember that I thought I was walking into her office to wish her a happy birthday. I didn't know I was walking into the moment she needed her father most. And sometimes, after everything else is gone, that's what matters. Not winning, not getting even, just making sure the person you love knows they don't have to stand there alone.